On July 10th of 2015, little DeOrr Kunz Jr. disappeared from an isolated campground where he was with his parents, his grandfather, and a family friend. Over a decade later, no evidence has been found to tell us where he is now, and nobody who was there seems to have the answers. What is up, YouTube? My name is Trinity, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. I am so happy to be back recording. This is my third time recording this, so here's to hoping that this one is the one. Today we are going to be talking about the disappearance of little DeOrr Kunz Jr., who is a 2-year-old that disappeared on a family camping trip and has not been found. DeOrr, referred to as Little Man by his family and friends, was born on December 30th of 2012 to parents Jessica Mitchell and Vernal DeOrr Kunz Sr. He was a happy, curious little boy who was especially attached to his mom. He did not like being away from her, even for a 10-minute grocery trip. And on top of that, he really loved playing with toy trucks and cars because his father, Vernal, was a truck driver, so he was very interested in them. DeOrr was only 2 years old when his parents took him on a camping trip, and with the little family came Bob Walton, who was Jessica's grandfather, making him DeOrr's great-grandfather, along with Bob's friend Isaac Rainwand, who had never met the little family. Now, according to friends and family that talked to the couple before going on the trip, it was very spur of the moment, like very last minute. Some said it was to celebrate Jessica keeping a job for 6 months, while others said that Bob kind of wanted to relive his youth and go on another camping trip. He was 80 years old at the time, and he wasn't in the best health. He was on an oxygen tank. So he kind of wanted to recapture that before he eventually passed away. They arrived at the Timber Creek campground, which is a very remote campground in the Salmon Challis National Forest, around 8:30 p.m. that night. On the way, the group had stopped a couple of places. They tried to stop at a diner for dinner, but when they got there, it was already closed. Vernal also mentioned that on the way, they stopped at a gas station where a truck driver was parked refueling, and he let DeOrr climb into his cab and even honk the horn. Once they arrived at the campground, they set up camp and almost immediately went to bed around 9:30 that night. Now, to describe the campground a little more, I already said it was kind of remote and isolated, and it was surrounded on all sides by natural geography, like a creek that ran through and some woods and mountains surrounding it. So Vernal and Jessica said that they had initially chosen this campground because it would be easier to keep an eye on DeOrr in case he wandered off, not that he was likely to do that, because as I said, he was a little clingy, especially to his mom. On top of that, in order to get to the campsite, you had to drive down a 7-mile road, meaning that you could see cars coming into the campsite well before they actually arrived. At 11:30 the next morning, Jessica said that her, Vernal, and DeOrr all went to the stage shop located in a nearby town called DeOrr because she had gotten her period and she did not come prepared, so they had to go find some feminine products. On the way to DeOrr, which was about an hour away, they also got lost for a little while, so that added some time that they were away, but they returned to the campsite around 1 p.m. When they got back, Isaac was apparently just coming back from fishing, and Bob was sitting outside of his camper near the campfire. Vernal wanted to see where Isaac had been fishing, so him, Jessica, and little DeOrr went to go follow him, but then one of them turned around and they asked DeOrr, "Do you want to come with us, or do you want to stay at the campsite with Grandpa?" It was around his nap time, so he might have seemed a little drowsy. And he apparently didn't say anything, but he went walking back towards Bob. Jessica says this is when she called out to Bob asking if he could watch DeOrr, and she said that she heard him call back yes. Now, Bob claimed that he never heard Jessica say that she was leaving DeOrr with him, and they followed Isaac down to the creek. While down there, Vernal said that they saw these little rainbow minnows that he knew DeOrr would love, so he started back towards the campsite while Isaac continued further down the creek, intending to go fishing somewhere else. Now, depending on whose story you believe, Jessica says that her and Vernal were only gone for about 5 minutes before he came back to the campsite, while Bob says that they were gone closer to 15 or 20 minutes. But when Vernal got back to the campsite, little DeOrr was not there. Jessica came back to the campsite and they searched for a while around the campsite trying to find DeOrr. I'm sure one thought in their mind was that he could have gone into the creek trying to follow them or something, because DeOrr had been wearing these cowboy boots that he was very fond of, but they were way too big for him. They were 2 sizes too big, and he would regularly walk out of them. And also, the path down to the creek was kind of steep, even for just a regular person. So, for a 2-year-old in shoes not fitting, I'm sure that's something that would have crossed their mind. Now, Jessica and Vernal following Isaac down to the creek happened between 1:30 and 2 o'clock, and DeOrr was discovered missing around 2:10. After searching around for a while and not being able to find a trace of him, both Vernal and Jessica decided to call 911. Jessica remained at the campsite and got a hold of 911, while Vernal claims that he drove 1.5 miles to get service to call 911. Now, in the background of Jessica's 911 call, you can hear another 911 operator talking to Vernal. You hear him say his name and everything, and you'll even hear that the operator she's speaking to asks, "Is your husband calling?" So I'm going to play that phone call for you right now so you can listen to what that sounded like.
14:28, 4 seconds, July 10, 2015. What's the address of your emergency?
I'm actually camping in Ledor, just outside of Ledor.
Uh-huh.
My 2-year-old son, we can't find him.
What's your name?
Jessica
Jessica who?
Mitchell.
How long has he been missing?
About an hour.
An hour?
Yeah.
Are you by water?
Yes.
Okay, stay on the phone with me, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to put you on hold. John? I need... Do you know which campground you're in? What?
Timber Creek.
Pardon me?
It's Stone Reservoir, Timber Creek.
Stone Reservoir?
Yeah, or Timber Creek.
Hold on. We need search and rescue. Jessica? Jessica?
Yeah.
What's your son's name?
Or
What is it?
your ORR.
What's his first name?
That's his first name. DeOrr.
Oh. B-O-R-R?
OR.
Just O-R-R? Okay. What is he wearing?
He was wearing cowboy boots, a blue pair, like pajama pants, and a camel jacket. And he's got shaggy blonde hair.
How tall is he? Hello?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure how. He's about.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Is your husband calling too?
Like all down where we were camping at, and we can't find him at all.
Okay. Hang on. Do you know how far outside of Ledor you are? What?
It's the turn off right after like the general store and the post office in Ledor, and it's at Timber Creek.
As you're going up over the pass?
If you're in Ledor and you're at the like gas station, you take the street on the left-hand side, right across the street from the gas station, and go straight out that street.
Is it a paved road?
No.
Okay, as you're headed towards Ledor, you take a right on the street across the street from the gas station.
It would be a left.
A left.
Yeah. And there's a sign that says, like, Timber Creek and
okay,
stuff like that.
And you're coming, like, from Idle Falls?
Yeah.
Okay. Hang on just a second. She said you take a left on the street just past the gas station as you're coming in from Idle Falls. And it says Timber Creek.
Yeah. I know where it is.
Okay. Okay, we need you to stay within cell service. We've got people going on the way.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. And you keep us updated with anything that's going on, okay?
Okay.
All right. Don't go away from cell service.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Jessica says on the phone call that they had been searching for over an hour, while later on she would say they were searching for closer to 20 minutes. Now, Isaac returned to the campsite after the search was already on for DeOrr. He said that he saw Vernal speeding off in his truck to apparently go find service. So he wasn't anywhere around when this was happening, and he did help the family continue to search. First responders, including the Lemhi County Sheriff's Department, Forest Service personnel, canine units, and a bunch of volunteers all showed up around 4 o'clock to begin the search for DeOrr. These first responders combed the surrounding area, the creek and any other waterways, mine shafts in the area, as well as the forest around them and any old roads. Pretty quickly, they confirmed pretty definitively that DeOrr was not in the creek, and they didn't think that he had tumbled in and maybe got swept off somewhere else. So that kind of eliminates the most obvious possibility of what happened, because obviously little kids drowning is not uncommon, unfortunately. Now, over the following days, over 200 volunteers would join the search for DeOrr, but again, nothing was found. They would even use helicopters, they used sonar to search deep bodies of water in the area, but nothing. On July 22nd, Sheriff Lynn Bowerman said that there was very little evidence to suggest that DeOrr had been abducted or the victim of an animal attack. I'm sure him wearing those boots was part of that determination because, again, if he was snatched up pretty quickly, they probably would have fallen off, at least one of them. And I'm sure they had a bunch of other evidence, such as lack of blood and no other vehicles seen coming into the area. Though she also did say at the time that they did not have any evidence and did not suspect foul play at the time. Though as investigators were talking to the family and trying to gather evidence to determine what had happened to DeOrr, they started noticing inconsistencies in everybody's stories except for Isaac. Isaac is the only one in this case who has the same story from beginning to end. But when they were talking to Jessica, Vernal, and Bob, they could not get their stories straight at all. It ranged from little things like who made breakfast that morning to bigger things like where Vernal actually was when DeOrr was left with him. Because one story was that Vernal was already out by the campfire, so he was outside, and there was verbal confirmation that he had accepted to watch DeOrr, even though he later denied that. Isaac claims that Vernal was inside of his trailer and that he was in fact asleep, so he couldn't have agreed to watch DeOrr at all. Some versions say that Vernal was in the camper, but he was awake, but again, he never heard Jessica. Though when he was interviewed, he was kind of flippant when investigators said, Jessica said that you confirmed. He was kind of like, oh, well, if that's what they said, which isn't really a straight answer. Also, to the point with Isaac saying that Vernal was definitively asleep in his trailer, in one of Vernal's variations of what happened, he also said this. That makes me lean towards that being the most likely scenario, meaning that his parents might have knowingly left him alone, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to continue with the investigation. Now, Vernal also shared a couple more stories about what had exactly happened before DeOrr went missing. One of his stories, he said that he saw DeOrr down by the creek and he assumed that the little boy was with his parents and he was just watching him, but then he turned away for a moment, and when he turned back, DeOrr was gone. However, another story states that he was again out by the campfire and he was watching DeOrr, but DeOrr sitting under a nearby tree, seemingly playing in the dirt or playing with his shoes, looking at something on the ground, and he must have lost time dozing off. And then when he came to, either DeOrr was gone or Vernal was kind of waking him up to ask where DeOrr had gone. Another inconsistency that investigators picked up on were the many stories that Vernal told to seemingly shore up the idea that DeOrr had been with them the entire camping trip, which would also come into question by some. Vernal claims that the cashier at the stage shop, the store that they had went to earlier that morning, had definitely seen DeOrr running around with them. While when she was asked about it, she said that the only little blonde boy that she had seen all day on the 10th was at 6 p.m. that day. And when this was brought back to Vernal, he said, she's just mistaken. So I'm sure that raised a couple of flags with investigators, because rather than implying like, oh, maybe I made a mistake, or maybe she just didn't see him or didn't remember, he was like, no, she's just wrong. Now, I also want to go back to everyone setting the timeline for the day before. Vernal said that they stopped to get gas, and a truck driver had allowed little DeOrr to climb up into the cab with him and honk the horn of the truck. Investigators looked into it, and the company that Vernal very specifically named had gone out of business years and years before. They did find a trucker that was in the area at the time that otherwise matched the description of what Vernal had said, but he said that he had not seen the family and he would never let a child, or any stranger for that matter, climb into his truck because he could lose his job for that, obviously. So that's another little fib that was put in there for seemingly no reason other than to shore up the idea that a lot of people had seen DeOrr. Searches continued through the summer, but again, nothing was really found, and in August, Vernal and Jessica were named as persons of interest in the disappearance of their son. Now, this was not because, at the time at least, investigators thought that they had done something to DeOrr, but they believed that they were withholding some sort of information that would be valuable in finding him. The family hired a private investigator named Frank Vilt to look into the disappearance of their son. And Vilt, during his time employed by the family, focused on a claim that I assume is connected to the cashier at the stage shop about a man driving a black Jeep Rubicon who was seen with a crying blonde toddler around 6 p.m. at the stage shop. So I assume this was the claim of the cashier there. He nicknamed this guy the creep in the Jeep, and he kept looking into the claim even though it could never be verified. Only a month into working with the family, though, Vilt would completely withdraw from the investigation. He would accuse both Vernal and Jessica of lying and obstruction of the case. Now, I'm going to read you guys his letter of withdrawal that was sent to the family on September 25th of 2015. Dear DeOrr and Jessica, as I previously informed you today via my text to your cellular telephone at 8:31 a.m., I am withdrawing from the investigation because of circumstances beyond my control, including but not limited to a breach of trust on your part concerning your refusal to allow me to make this case national. I am perplexed as to why you would not want me to advertise the $20,000 reward. I was willing to put up personal funds in the hopes that the public could provide information leading to the whereabouts of your son. When I agreed to assist you, I informed you that I would work for my out-of-pocket expenses. I was willing to forego my normal hourly fee. My stipulation was that both of you would be absolutely truthful. I told both of you that if I felt you were not telling me the truth, stalling me, or otherwise misleading me, that I would withdraw from the investigation. In my professional opinion, both of you lied and misrepresented the true facts that could solve the mystery of your missing son. There are other aspects to this case I cannot go into at this time, but simply put, I believe that the searches will all be non-productive. The searches are only used by you to cover a possible crime that one or both of you may have committed. My suggestion is that you fully cooperate with the Limhi County Sheriff and tell the truth. Going further into the letter, he accused Vernal and Vernal's father of spreading misinformation and defaming him and his business, as well as the couple not paying for the expenses that they agreed upon. More time passed and still no breakthroughs on where DeOrr was. And in January of 2016, both parents were named as suspects in the disappearance of their son. Sheriff Lynn Bowerman said that the couple had been, quote, less than truthful with investigators, and also talked about inconsistencies in the statements that they had given about when their son went missing. She went on to state that she did not believe this was a case of abduction or an animal attack, but it was likely an accidental death that was being covered up or even potentially a homicide. Ended by stating that charges could be filed at the time, but in case better evidence arose, they wanted to avoid the potential of double jeopardy, because if you guys don't remember from school learning this, once somebody is tried in a case, they cannot be tried for the same case again. So imagine if they had brought this to trial saying that the parents had killed DeOrr, but the jury wasn't convinced, and then the very next day they could find DeOrr's body, which completely verifies everything that they accused the couple of, but because they had already been tried, they could not be tried again. They would walk free for that. They might be able to be tried on like child abuse or wrongful death, or I don't know how it works exactly, but they would not be able to be tried for murder if that's what they were going for the first time. It was also during January that the couple hired another PI named Philip Klein. Apparently, in the beginning, Klein reached out, I think, to a family member of the couple, but then eventually got into contact with Vernal, who wanted to work with him, but Jessica did not want anything to do with him, but was eventually convinced. He noted that the first time meeting the family, there were a lot of extended family members there, and everybody seemed very upset. They teared up, they cried about DeOrr and talking about what had happened, but he noted that Jessica and Vernal themselves were very reserved. They didn't show their emotions too much, which you always hear it. You can't judge people by their reactions to things. They had been living this for months and months, so maybe they had just kind of cried themselves out and were kind of numb to the situation. That doesn't sound great, but it's a possibility, or it could indicate something else, but you can't really judge based on that. Now, them working with the couple was very rocky all throughout, but especially in the beginning, because after Klein and the associate that was with him got off the plane from coming back from visiting the family, news broke that Vernal and Jessica both had failed multiple polygraph tests, even though Vernal specifically was asked, did you fail any polygraphs? And Vernal had said to them that he hadn't failed any, but they always came back inconclusive, leaning towards truthful, which I'm not sure if that's something that polygraphs could even be determined as. I don't know. If there's anyone that's ever done a polygraph, I guess, let me know. Now, I also want to add that Philip Klein was only asking for the family to cover the expenses related to the investigation. The firm themselves put $130,000 into investigating this disappearance, meaning they were not charging the family an hourly fee, a retainer fee, anything like that. And any money that did come from the family actually came from GoFundMes that were put up for them in order to fundraise for stuff like this. So the family didn't actually pay anything. It all came from donations. Now, at Jessica and Vernal's request, Philip Klein took over the investigation from the Lemhi County Sheriff's Office, which seems like something you shouldn't be able to do, because I don't know what my opinions are on private investigators. I see how they can be useful, but I also feel like if you're paying someone to look into something, there could be some bias and conflict of interest, but I don't know. But I'm sure Jessica and Vernal would very quickly come to regret this decision of even hiring Klein to begin with, because only 2 months later, in March of 2016, he came out and said that Jessica told him that she knew where DeOrr's body was. He claims that she made this statement during one of their many interviews together, though on the 10 hours of recorded interviews, this statement could not be found, and investigators said that this was not a credible claim. But just putting that out there, especially without the actual evidence to back it up, even if she did say that, seems like it could risk your reputation. Maybe I would tell the investigators, the actual police officers that were still working, but maybe not make it a public thing. Now, Jessica and Vernal broke off their engagement about 6 months after this fateful camping trip. However, it seems like they lived together for a bit longer, but they were evicted from their apartment in July of 2016. Or at least they were evicted around that time, and that's when investigators gained access because the landlord told them, like, hey, they haven't come to pick up their stuff. If you want to look through what they left behind, go for it. Now, when investigators entered the residence, they had left so much stuff there, but they noted that a lot of the stuff that was left was DeOrr's. And for parents that had lost their child, whether it be through death or just not knowing where that child is, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that they would just leave that stuff there. Like, those are your connections to your child. And if he ever happened to be found, like, oops, we left all your shit that you cared about. I mean, maybe if he came back when he's older, he wouldn't care that much, but that's still something you can use to hold on to, you know? And among the belongings of DeOrr that they left there was a camouflage jacket and some toy cars that Vernal and Jessica claimed DeOrr had disappeared with. Now, I understand that the cars themselves, you can't really verify if he had specific toy cars. Like, it would be pretty hard to keep track of them all. But the jacket that they said he was wearing when he went missing is found in their home. That's troubling. Now, after hearing about this, Klein sent a canine cadaver team to the campground. The dogs signaled to 5 different locations around the campground, including one that was less than a mile away from the actual campsite. And he claims that he believes this spot was used as a holding place for a dead body. He also went on to claim that he believed that DeOrr's passing did not happen on July 10th, but on July 9th, and he wasn't sure that he believed that DeOrr had ever been to the campground to begin with. He estimated that DeOrr had passed away around 5 p.m. on July 9th, and I guess he thinks that the camping trip was some sort of cover. Now, I'm not sure if he believes that their timeline of when they arrived to the campground is incorrect, or if they brought the already deceased remains of DeOrr to the campground in order to hide him, but however, I don't agree with this theory of his. In March of 2017, Klein came out with even more statements claiming that he believed that the parents were covering up for the death of DeOrr, whether it was accidental or on purpose, as well as for further breaches in contract, such as not paying for investigative costs. In a document, he outlined all of the different steps that they had gone through to try to verify the story given to him about what had happened those 2 days while at the campsite. Now, he said that a time distance study failed to verify the timeline of the parents, and because of failed polygraphs and changing stories, Vernal, Jessica, and Walton were found to be deceptive. Isaac was the only one found to be truthful, if not omitting information. They considered him to be a person of interest or at least a witness. A cell phone impact study disproved Vernal's claim of driving 1.5 miles for service, even though that seems pretty obvious since Jessica was able to get service just fine to call 911. And a site location study determined the testimony of the family not only couldn't be verified, but could not have occurred. So I'm not sure exactly what statements are claiming couldn't have occurred, but that's what they determined. On November 13th of 2017, Klein was officially fired by the family from the case. So that's 2 private investigators now that have accused the couple of both lying and potentially a cover-up. So it's not really looking good. It was on November 15th that Klein released a statement officially withdrawing from DeOrr's case. It said, quote, "On Monday, November 13th, 2017, KIC Texas provided formal notice to Steve Penner, Lemhi County Sheriff, that we would be withdrawing from the DeOrr Kunz case effective immediately. I would like to make the reasons for withdrawal very clear for the media and general public. We believe KIC Texas can no longer move forward in this case. It is our firm belief that until truthfulness comes from the persons that we, as well as law enforcement, have named as suspects, there is nothing further to investigate. All evidence leads to the death of DeOrr Kunz Jr. We do not believe a kidnapping or animal attack occurred. All evidence supports this finding. We believe charges should be filed on the parents for child endangerment at minimum. We publicly asked the district attorney for Lemhi County to strongly consider this charge. We've recently become aware that Vernal DeOrr Kunz and his father Dennis Kunz have filed another lawsuit against our firm. This suit, as well as the misinformation campaign by certain social media trolls, appears to be a coordinated effort to impede the investigation. We are unable to continue our efforts in this case while simultaneously defending against a suit of this nature. As we have said, the truth is the ultimate defense. Now, I know in there it talked about them suing Klein's company. Again, they sued Klein's company 3 different times. Now, each time that they went to sue Klein's company, they lost in court. And there's 2 reasons why I and other people believe that they had done this. The first is financial gain. They were trying to sue back for the money that they had paid Klein, even though those were all donations raised on GoFundMe. So the judge was like, why are you suing for money that you never paid? You do not have loss of this money. So it seems like you're trying to benefit from your child's disappearance. And the second reason that people think that they wanted to sue Klein is what they call a discovery hunt, I think. Essentially, in discovery, when each side is receiving information from the other side in order to build their case, the theory is they wanted to see what evidence that Klein had come upon that was making him accuse them of covering up DeOrr's death or outright murder. They wanted to see what evidence he had collected in order to better defend themselves if this ever went to trial. Let's say blood was found on an object and they were theorizing, oh, somebody hit DeOrr. Then if it went to trial, they could say, oh yeah, the blood that was found on that stick or whatever, DeOrr cut his hand open and that's why there's blood on it, not because we did anything. In June of 2019, a team of 2 cadaver dogs were deployed to the area by PI David Marshburn, who was working with the Lemhi County Sheriff's Department. Both of these dogs alerted to the same areas. In order to test if this could have been a false positive or something, a separate team of dogs was brought in, and one of them did also alert to the same area that the first 2 alerted to. So the park was shut down, and they excavated this area to see what they could find. They found a child-size fleece jacket that had blood on it as well as hair. Though, unfortunately, the DNA that remained on it was fragmentary, so it could not definitively be linked to DeOrr in any way. In 2020, this private investigator, Marshburn, was officially brought onto the case, though I don't think it was by the family. It was probably by the sheriff's department, and he also immediately expressed doubts with the parents' story. And that is basically the entire case. There has never been really any evidence found, or at least none that has been shared, that will kind of clue the public in on what exactly happened. There's been theories that there was drinking going on at the campground, and maybe Vernal accidentally hit and killed his son, and they all decided to cover it up because, mind you, Vernal's a truck driver, so something like that on his record would ruin his career. Or some accident happened. Maybe he did drown, and the family covered it thinking that they would get in trouble in some way, even though usually in accidents like that, especially if you're expressing that it's an accident and you're trying to get your child help, like, they're not going to look at you unless it was clear that you like put that child in danger. I'm not even sure what I think happened because there's so little information, and 3 of the 4 people that were there with DeOrr are considered completely untrustworthy. They failed polygraph so many times and they lied so many times on things that should be very simple. We'll never get to know what the true story was from Bob because he died in 2019. So whatever he had with him went to the grave. Though I will say Bob is certainly a piece of work, because some statements made in some of the interviews that Philip Klein did with him are absolutely disgusting. He was asked if he ever showed affection to DeOrr, ever picked him up, gave him hugs and kisses, that kind of stuff, and he was like, no, I don't touch him like the women do. That's like very old school, like old man type of stuff to do. Like, it's not manly to show affection to your children, that kind of stuff. But that could be passed off as like, okay, he's from a different generation, even if it is shitty. But then he also made a comment saying, what's done is done. They can always have another, referring to Jessica and Vernal just having another baby if they wanted to. And whatever happened to DeOrr didn't matter, which is so disgusting. It's not like DeOrr is like his own little person. It's just they can replace him. And even if they did have another kid and everything was fine, wouldn't you still want to know what happened to your grandson? Like, that just doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if he was killed. It doesn't matter if he was taken. What a disgusting person. Now, I said earlier that I don't believe Klein's theory that something happened the night before, because while it is weird that nobody along the way could verify seeing DeOrr outside of the little party, the cashier, the truck driver, nobody could verify that he was definitely with them. I think he was. Maybe he didn't go to the stage shop in the morning, but I think he was, because Isaac's story has remained the same, that he was there with them. I go back and forth, because if this was something premeditated where they wanted to go on this camping trip deliberately to hurt DeOrr, why bring a total stranger that has never met the family, that has no reason to protect the family? But on the other hand, depending on how diabolical they were getting, maybe they were going to use him as a cover, like, oh, why would we do anything to our son with this stranger here? Like, that's weird. And also, maybe he did something, because they all turned on him immediately. Bob, who was supposed to be this man's friend who invited him on the trip, said that he wouldn't trust him. He doesn't trust him with money. He wouldn't trust him to be in the same house. But you invited him on a camping trip with your family with your small grandson. Make it make sense. Like, all of them were trying to pin it on him, but it just was not working. It's also possible, though I don't think it's ever been confirmed, that Isaac, who is 30, so a lot younger than the 80-year-old Bob, but might have just been around so he wasn't lonely or something, he might have had some intellectual delays, which I feel like would make it even harder for him to potentially keep something like that if he did hurt DeOrr, which I don't believe he did. And also, the timeline of events given for how he would have hurt DeOrr, he would have to take Vernal and Jessica down to the creek, double back, and between 5 and 20 minutes, murder DeOrr and hide his body so effectively that investigators could not find him, and then also fuck off for an entire hour without being seen by anyone, and then come back and play dumb like he didn't know anything happened. So I don't buy that he was involved at all. I think maybe he would have been threatened, because on top of saying that Bob was in the camper and he was asleep, so kind of almost confirming the fact that DeOrr was left unsupervised, probably knowingly, he remembers that they arrived to the campsite with a cooler, but they did not leave with that. So what my theory as to what happened is that they knowingly left DeOrr unsupervised with Bob, thinking that, oh, we'll be back, nothing is going to happen. Even though he's an 80-year-old man on a fucking oxygen tank, so what's going to happen if DeOrr runs off or something does happen? But, hindsight's 20/20, I guess. I think that something happened to DeOrr while they were gone that resulted in his death. And that maybe Bob was able to somehow take care of it. Vernal came back asking where he was. Not that I like Vernal or he's a good person, but there's certain things that make me think that he may not have been in on whatever happened. Jessica comes back. He talks to Jessica because that's his granddaughter, and she doesn't want him to get in trouble for whatever happened. And in order to get Vernal to go along with it, either knowingly or unknowingly, she talks about how maybe his career would be over if this got out, or the police are going to automatically suspect them even though he's not involved, even though they're not involved. So that prompts him to lie about things that happened, about people seeing DeOrr, even though he's not specifically responsible. The reason that I think that he probably wasn't in on it is because Jessica once said to Philip Klein that she does believe that Vernal would be capable of hurting their son. Generally, if two people are in on a crime or a secret like that, you don't want to talk shit about the other person, because if they know something, they might turn on you. So that makes me think like she was more okay with throwing him under the bus, especially if he wasn't in the know, to protect her grandfather. If he did know about it, Jessica and Bob were probably in his ear like, oh, they're going to get you too, even though whatever it was is mostly on Bob for not being awake and Jessica for not verifying that he was awake. I think they put him in the cooler, and Vernal going to call 911, even though there was service at the campsite, was him hiding the body somewhere as a holding place until it could be moved again. He did call 911 there just to shore up that alibi but I think that's what happened. And since breaking up, Jessica and Vernal have both moved out of Idaho. They apparently don't talk to each other, which again is pretty weird considering you shared a kid that you lost. So even if it was a messy breakup or you don't get along or like each other anymore, like that's still, along with the stuff that you left at your house, that's your other connection with your child that you lost. But I'm not a parent, so maybe I wouldn't get it. Maybe there's more to their relationship that I don't know about, but it just seems kind of weird to me. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think happened to little DeOrr? Do you think that it was one of the parents? Do you think it was the grandfather? Or do you think it's something totally out of the ordinary that I didn't even bring up? When I was researching this case, it initially came up as a missing 411 case because he did go missing while camping, but I feel like it's definitely one of the parents. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. So for this video's viewer comment that I want to read, I actually got this a month ago. I know I've been gone, but it's still one that stuck out to me that I definitely wanted to read. Now, I have no verification that this person is in any way related to the case that they commented on, but I don't see why you would comment that you are if you're not. This was a comment left under the Lesnar Velasquez video that I did last year by user Jen Tap Steve. Thank you so much for sharing this. Brian Kinsey is my grandfather. Lesnar was family. We're still looking for him. And I responded that I was happy, of course, to share it with everybody, and I hope that Lesnar is found safe and brought back home. So that's really cool that even though my videos are pretty small and all right, we're going to have to do this in the dark because my light just died. But just because my channel is small and my videos don't always get the most views, it's nice to know that they're getting somewhere and that I could potentially be making a difference. So that's really cool to feel. But thank you all so much for watching today. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and click that notification bell if you haven't already, just because I want you guys to know whenever I upload. I know it's not very often, but I want our little community to grow and for us to get to talk about more important things like true crime, as well as more fun things like cryptids that I normally do. I love and appreciate you guys so much, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.